everybody, and welcome back to more political chatter. In this video, we will be talking about the way that Donald Trump could win re-election in the 2024 election that nobody is really talking about. I think that there is a very unexpected way that Donald Trump actually could eke out a victory in the case of a close election that's being very under-discussed, and that is the utilization of blue states. Of course, we have our purple states. These are the results from the 2020 election. And we have our very close states known as purple states, where it's very split between Democrat and Republican, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. These states, these swing states that are not filled in on this 2024 election prediction map, that we really don't know how they're going to go at this point in time. But then we have some of the more some of the more blue and red states that we generally know how they're going to vote, and they're mostly Democrat or Republican when in terms of statewide votes. That's states like, as for the Democrats, that's states like Virginia, which voted for Biden by 10%, or Minnesota, which voted for Biden by 7%. Or New Mexico, which voted for him by 10, or Colorado, which was by 13, or New Hampshire by 7. And then you have those same states for the Republicans, which are states like Ohio, which went to Trump by 8, Iowa, which went to him by 8 as well, and then South Carolina, which went to him by 12. But then you have the ultra red or blue states on each side, where there is a 0% chance of them going the other way. While in Minnesota we have a 7% win for Biden in 2020, or a 10% win for Biden in 2020 in Virginia, you see a state like Massachusetts voted for him by 33.5%, or California voted for him by 29.2%, or Maryland, which also voted for him by 33%. So, those states are really out of the question. But as for the mostly blue states, but they're not ultra blue, right? States like Minnesota, or states like Virginia, or New Mexico, or Colorado, these are the states that could lead Donald Trump to victory in 2024, and I believe that is going very under-discussed. We talk so much about really the 6 core swing states, that being Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, 5 of which flipped in 2020. You see that in 2016, these are the 2016 results up now. You see that Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona all voted for Donald Trump. Nevada voted for Hillary Clinton. But in 2016, all 6 voted for Joe Biden. So these states swing back and forth. These states are known as the states that decide elections. Also, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district flipped from Republican in 2016 to Democrat, Joe Biden, in 2020. So these are seen as the states that both candidates could win, and both could lead either candidate to a victory in the Electoral College. Remember, you need 270 electoral votes to win. But looking at these swing states, before we get to the unexpected way that Donald Trump could win this election, we do have to look at these swing states because they make up 78 electoral votes. And I would argue that in this scenario, just for the heck of this, proving how Donald Trump can win this election, I would say that Donald Trump could just forget about Michigan and Pennsylvania. I think that both of these states are very unlikely for him at this point in time, and I do think that Biden is definitely favored to win in both of these states. But before we even get to that, out of these 6 swing states, you see that Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Nevada voted for Biden by the most amount. And you see that Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona, all of them voted for Joe Biden by a very small margin in 2020. All 3 were below a 1% margin for Joe Biden. Georgia, 0.2%, Wisconsin, 0.3%, and Arizona, 0.3%. So, considering the fact that 2024 obviously will be a much more Republican year nationally than it was in 2020, considering Biden's unpopularity, considering his crumbling coalition, Democrats and progressives not turning out for him again in 2024, I would think that if Donald Trump is able to flip some of these states, it would be definitely Arizona and Georgia. And I also think that he would win Nevada. And I know that might be a little surprising considering that it went to Biden by 2.4%. But let's just look at these polls for a little bit. Looking at these 6 critical swing states, you see that so we have kind of 2 sections for these swing states, right? You have the blue wall, which is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And then you have Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, which are 3 Sun Belt states. So you have 3 Sun Belt swing states, and then you have 3 Rust Belt swing states. They're 3 and 3 right next to each other. And when you look at polling, you notice that the Rust Belt looks much more friendly towards Joe Biden versus the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, they almost look gone for Joe Biden. Just looking at Arizona for a second. I'll mind you, this is a state that he won in 2020. He won it by 0.3%. The polling indicates that Donald Trump leads by almost 5% of the vote. 5%. And then look at Georgia. It only gets worse. Donald Trump in Georgia leads by 5.5% in this, again, a state that Biden won. But shockingly, the worst of them all, I believe, at least it was some time ago, is Nevada. And yes, it still is. Donald Trump, on average in polling, leads by 6.6%. 6.6%. That is a 9-point shift to the right from 2020 because Biden won it by 2.4%, and the polling shows that Trump will win it by 6.6% if the election were held today. So when you look at the Sunbelt polling, it almost looks gone for Trump. For Biden. It's an absolute disaster for Biden. But when you go up and look at the Rust Belt, it doesn't really look as devastating as some of the Sunbelt polls do. Just looking at the state of Michigan, you see that Donald Trump does lead, but he only leads by 0.9%. He leads by a tilt margin. I mean, that is very much in the margin of error, meaning it could go either way, Donald Trump or Joe Biden. You know, the polls could be that wrong. While the Sunbelt polls are not in the margin of error. I mean, the Sunbelt polls, there isn't much room, or there isn't enough room for error, I should say, where Biden can actually even, possibly win some of those states. And then looking at Wisconsin, we see here that Donald Trump is only ahead by 1.6%, significantly less than Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. And then finally, just looking at Pennsylvania here, not too long ago, Biden was actually leading in these polls. But nowadays, let me just try to find him. Here it is. Donald Trump does lead by 2.1%, but again, significantly less than those Sunbelt polls. So polls indicate, polls indicate that Donald Trump is crushing it in the Sunbelt, and it doesn't even really look like that he could possibly lose those states, but that Biden is not too bad in the Rust Belt. So I do think that polls are overestimating Trump this election year. So let's just say that Biden wins the Rust Belt while Trump takes the Sun Belt. I think that is in the realm of possibility. This isn't my exact prediction, but looking at the results from 2020, Wisconsin is a little debatable. But looking at the polls and the results from 2020, this could be the map, and probably Nebraska second goes Democrat, it did go to Biden by 6.6%, by the way, in 2020, which would give Joe Biden 270 electoral votes, which puts him at enough to be elected president. You need 270 to win, and that would be 270 to 268. But what if? Donald Trump has a lot of ways to win. And one of those ways, of course, is carrying a Rust Belt state. That's most likely Wisconsin, considering his 2020 performance, where he only lost it by 0.6%. So he can do that, and that easily wins him really just any other state, as long as he carries the Sun Belt swing states. Or, which is what this video is about, all Donald Trump has to do, he could totally abandon the Rust Belt for what it's worth. And what he could instead do is target any single blue state. We went over this in the beginning because you do have quite a few blue states, but you have some where Donald Trump in 2020 was in striking distance. These aren't ultra-democratic states like Massachusetts or California or Hawaii or Maryland are. Some like Minnesota, where Biden won by 7, or Virginia, where Biden won by 10, or New Mexico, where Biden won by 11, or New Hampshire even. These are states that are within striking striking distance. And you see, with this narrow margin, all Donald Trump would have to do is carry a single, somewhat blue state. Remember, money and time and rallies is so important in presidential elections. And if Donald Trump is confident in the Sunbelt swing states, if he knows that he could win Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, he could completely abandon the Rust Belt, put money and time and everything into other blue states that he thinks he can win, or even a single blue state. If he's confident in the others, then he could put his resources and everything into a single blue state if he thinks he can be handed victory there. And that is an unexpected way that no one is talking about that Donald Trump could win this election. I mean, even, considering how close this is, even Maine at large is a possibility. And that would give Trump 270 to Biden's 268. It doesn't need to be a big victory at all. But looking at Maine, there was a single poll that was conducted earlier this year. And when you look at the at-large results, you see that Trump actually leads by 6. Now, I doubt that this happens as of now, but if Donald Trump can divert resources and really campaign and put money into Maine, I think that it's a possibility that he could come out on top in Maine. But if not Maine, with this result, with a 270 to 268 result right now, Donald Trump has so many possibilities. He could go for Maine at large, because he doesn't need a big state with over 10 electoral votes. It could be anything. He could go over Maine at large, or he could go at Maine at large. He could go at New Hampshire, which only voted for Hillary Clinton by 0.3%. It was razor thin back in 2016. Hillary won it by less than a percentage point. Donald Trump could come back and take it this time around. He could go for New Hampshire, or he could go for New Mexico, which is 5 electoral votes. Some people think that he will win New Mexico, like when you look at polling and everything. He could go after Colorado. He could go after Minnesota, which actually is very much in the realm of possibility. The only thing that he can't go after is Nebraska second, because that puts it at an electoral tie. You see, 269 to 269. But the point is, if Donald Trump can get the Sun Belt, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, which I expect he will if everything goes as planned, he can really, shake up this election and do something that we haven't seen in recent political history by abandoning the critical blue wall, which is seen as the most important parts of presidential elections, and instead go for other states. He can go for small states that Democrats might forget about, like Maine. Maine is not targeted very much in presidential elections. Democrats might just forget about Maine. But if Trump can win Maine at large and win the Sun Belt, he can let Biden have the Rust Belt. That is the point. He can let Biden have the Rust Belt. So that could be, this deserves to be discussed, that Donald Trump can win the 2024 election by just winning a single blue state. That is how he could win. So thank you all for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a like and leave a comment. It helps out a lot. And I will see you all later.